I love it when people try new things. And I feel like once you learn the vocabulary, if I understand what you want me to see and feel, then it's working. What you're doing is working if you brought me with you. That's important to me, is to help people find their own way.
He is an accomplished mime and award-winning actor who has performed on Broadway and stages across the world.
He is also a gifted teacher in the art of storytelling and movement.
Bill Bowers breaks his silence on today's episode.
My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of. I was telling this story to Joel Jeske on the train last night.
And who is Joel Jeske?
Joel Jeske is a clown, and we all work in a very similar circle of people, clowns and mimes and acrobats and all those people. And I was telling him about your dress rehearsal for Montana Moon in Edinburgh, and I'd love for you to tell it because I'm sure I tell it wrong, but my version is very good.
Well, I was going to say, I think your version is probably better. I'll tell my version is that I do this 75-minute show about why I became a mime, and it gets increasingly more heartfelt and more intimate. And at the very end of the show, it ends with me doing this pantomime, this silent pantomime, very romantic pantomime of me. It's a farmer who falls in love with the moon, and he pulls the moon out of the sky. And in the midst of that silent beauty, we were in Edinburgh, and it was the Edinburgh, what was it, Peter? Was it
It's the military tattoo, which happens every day during the Fringe, where they celebrate the war.
Yeah. And
with marching bands and cannons and rifles. It's like the most beautiful, silent, serene. Your venue was like 5 floors up in this old building, which I think was a what are those people called? With the symbol they build things.
Oh,
not Shriners. It's
right,
it's in Peggy Sue Got Married.
The Amish?
No, it's it's those people, and they have like the sign of the compass is their sign, and it's like a secret club. And
right, what are they called?
What the hell is it called? Damn,
the
whoever's
Knights of the
right
something. Don't worry about it.
Templar. Templar
okay.
is one of them, but it's the equivalent of the Flintstones. You know, when Fred and Barney wear those big yak hats with the horns. It's the equivalent.
Oh, the elf.
All
right, I'm getting farther and farther away.
No. This is going great.
Right.
It's like it's a magical space, and it's a magical moment, and Bill's a magical performer. The show is peppered with words and mime, and and he's gonna lasso the moon, and it's just so peaceful and bang bang bop 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 pop bop 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 boom boom boom. You
actually told this story on another episode.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's
we did.
Totally my kind of humor.
That you were there was kind of the perfect. That was the perfect part of it.
But it never happened. It never happened again because it was just a rehearsal at the timing.
Oh, thank God it was just a rehearsal.
Yeah.
I was going to say, how did you deal with that? Like, if that was a live show, because we've all had crazy stuff happen during live shows. What would you do if that happened? Would you just change the ending?
Oh, I mean, I kind of can't change the ending.
Right.
I mean, based on everything else that's happened in the play. So I would have just carried on or pretend like I'd been shot, perhaps.
It's Edinburgh. Everyone knows that shit happens. You know, there was always like they were always dumping out the bottles or pints or whatever in the bar behind me at the same time, pretty much every show, and you just kind of make a joke about it or roll with it.
Yeah.
There would be a band that would start playing on a stage in the courtyard in the beer garden just as I was starting my show. So I would just say, I'm sorry I didn't introduce my backup band. You know?
Yeah. I used to play at Cafe Chenet on 8th Street, and I had a song called You Say You Know Me. And one of the lyrics was, "'Cause if you knew me, you would have known the way I take." And then there's a big long pause, my coffee. And so Chenet, Jennifer, who ran Cafe Chenet, every time she would ask me at the beginning of the show, "Are you going to do that song tonight?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So she would have it queued up. So as soon as I would take that pause, she'd run the cappuccino machine because it was all coffee and scones and things like that. It was so great, and it became a thing, But it was so great to have that.
Did you ever have to speak in a mime show that you didn't expect to have to speak, but you just had to something,
Wow,
a dog ran up on stage or something, or?
No, I have had dogs run up on stage while I've been performing.
You just didn't talk
I didn't
about
speak.
it.
No, I don't. I don't break that rule when I'm really being a mime.
I'm curious about how first of all, what made you go into mime? And then also just on that what Pete was talking about, what do you do? Because you know that people are always trying to goad you if you're ever in a place where people are close enough. I'm sure now you're doing shows where there's a distance, but at some point in your career, you must have been in a place where you were miming and people were trying to break you or
Oh my
coming up
God.
really close.
Yeah, I have many stories about that. Yeah.
And what would you do?
The best example of that is many years ago. In the 80s, I used to be the mechanical man who was one of those robotic mimes. It was very popular in the 80s.
Oh, you have the little whistle in your mouth?
I didn't have the whistle. I probably should have added that. But I was mechanical, and people thought I was a statue, and then they would get near me and I'd move, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'd perform at malls and, well, basically anywhere they'd let me. And one time I was at an arts festival somewhere in New Jersey in the summer, and it was outside in a park that had a big pond. And I had found this kind of rock that was like raised up. So it was a good stage for me. And I was pretending to be this statue. And this kid, I don't know, he was just a little demon. I think his mother just slowed the car down and threw him out because he was just marauding around this park. He was probably 10 or 11. He was just a monster. And of course, he found the mime and he started terrorizing me. And it went on the whole day. He would come up behind me. I mean, he would like snap his fingers in my eyes, or he'd hit me in the back of the knees. And people, no one really intervened. Every once in a while, someone would yell out like, "Hey kid, leave the clown alone," or something. But he was just left to his own devices. And I have a very long fuse as a person, but I wanted to kill this kid.
I'm sure.
It just kept getting worse. He was putting his fingers in my nose. And so by afternoon, I had made a plan. And that kid kept getting closer and closer and closer to me. And finally, he got just close enough to me that I could grab him. I grabbed him, picked him up, and threw him in the pond.
Yay!
And from all around the park, people went,
amazing.
And did his mother come up or anyone?
No,
after?
nobody. Everybody just applauded me because he was so awful.
Wow.
So if you're listening, kid.
Right. He's probably a mime now.
He probably has his own podcast talking about being traumatized as a child.
Probably, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that is crazy. I love that. Today you would be arrested for that.
I know.
Right?
I know. It's a different time.
Yeah.
And going back to Nancy's initial question, how did you land in the world of mime?
Well,
I should let the listeners know, you do many, many, many other things.
Yeah,
but
your
mime
resume
is what you are
amazing.
known for.
Yeah. I'm an actor. I'm a performer and a writer, but I've always had an interest in mime since a very young age. And it's funny, I actually wrote a whole play about that very question: why did I become a mime? And that's what I was doing in Edinburgh, as a matter of fact. But the short answer to this is that I'm a mime because I'm from Montana, which is a big, quiet place, and I grew up in a rural area. My mom's family homesteaded in Montana, so I feel like it's in my DNA. We've been out there since the Oregon Trail, so I've always been around this big silence that I was very drawn to. I'm also from a big, quiet family that talks about nothing. And so very early on in my life.
Or is it okay?
Yeah. Like stoicism, that just kind of 50s, American, let's not talk about anything hard. Not uncommon.
Especially children be seen, not heard, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I was paying attention to a lot of that. And mostly I was paying attention because I'm also a gay man, and they were really not talking about that. I mean, the word gay didn't really even exist when I was a little kid. So I always imagine it's kind of those three circles of silence: Montana, my family, and being a gay kid in a small town. So I didn't know what mime was, but I knew I was really good at not talking. Very familiar with that world. And when I found out there was an art of silence, I think I learned it through people like Charlie Chaplin, certainly, who I loved, and Danny Kaye, and people I saw on TV.
Shields and Yarnell, I think.
Shields and Yarnell.
That was your time. Yep.
Oh my God, I forgot about them.
Yeah.
I was obsessed.
I was too.
God.
I just knew that was a world I knew, and I just stepped into it. Yeah.
So you're also an actor. Do you feel more comfortable in mime because of that silence, because of growing up in that?
Big
I
head
like how
nodding,
he's nodding,
everyone.
miming,
Bill Bowers has the
I mean,
best
yes.
head of hair. It's
I
really
know.
annoying.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
good.
Between him and Melinda Buckley, it's sort of a
Oh yeah, she has
toss-up.
pretty great hair
She has
too.
pretty great hair.
No, I
But
feel very familiar and comfortable in mime. Yeah, it's just always been my go-to. It's kind of supported the work I do as an actor. I do a lot of roles that are really physical and that kind of thing. But I love the world of nonverbal physical theater.
I love that you said the art of silence. And it's funny because I grew up thinking of it as mime only, but the art of silence puts such a different view on it because it really is an art. And there is something about being able to, I mean, your family, it's different when it's avoidance, but to be able to be in that silence and to be creating something in that space that also is very communicative without overdoing it. I almost feel like now every actor should experience that and should work on mime with that kind of mindset.
Mhm.
You know, there's something to it. I don't know
Yeah.
that I never really thought about. It's the same
Well,
thing with clowning, right?
yeah, I teach a lot in New York City and other places. And one of the things I always have students do is to tell me, like, for example, right after the holidays, I'll say, tell me about your holiday vacation or your break, but you can't use any word. And that's very interesting things come up. And by and large, they're very emotional.
Wow. Like what? Give us an example.
Oh,
Well,
Or
it
maybe
kind of
not.
would be hard. That's not great podcast material, but
visiting family, the whole thing about you
Sure.
home again.
Putting on a different face for the family.
Yeah.
Then yeah.
Totally. It comes up all the time. So I agree, Nancy. I think it's great training for actors to just take away the words and then what can you tell us if you couldn't say a word?
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like you do exercises as an actor when you're a young actor in acting class where they give you one word and you have to communicate a whole story through that one word, or you have to get someone to do something. It's like what we were talking about with Daniel Spector. Action. You have to take action or get someone to do something with one word. It's not the same thing with mime because you're kind of telling a whole story when you're miming.
Mhm.
So when you're creating a piece, what's the process of coming up with a project that you know is going to be all mime?
For me, usually I've started writing plays in a way that have nonverbal sections. I actually should just admit to you that I actually speak as a mime too. I use mime, but I also use it in combination with text and in combination with music and voiceover. But I generally start with looking for the question I want to answer. So the play that we've been referring to is a play called It Goes Without Saying, and it was based on
I love it.
it's based on the question that everybody asks, like you asked me 5 minutes ago, why are you a mime? Why are you a mime? I ended up writing a whole play of just answering that question, like what was my experience that led to being interested in not talking? So I look for a question. I wrote another play very much about like what it is to be a boy. What's a boy? What's a man? That kind of thing. So I look for a question I want to answer. And I don't know that I think narratively as much as I used to. Now I think almost like imagistically. I think of an image that I find really interesting to me. Like I wrote a piece once about a boy who goes to a circus in the early 50s, and it's a little bit it's based on my experience as a kid and also a story someone told me about going to a small town carnival where there was a freak show. And so I had this story in my mind that happened to someone that shared it with me, and then I had an image of this child with balloons just flying away out of the circus, out of this little town. And so sometimes it's imagistic and I kind of work back from that.
Yeah, it's funny thinking about what prompts us to create. I used to write, like for me, writing songs. I sometimes would have dreams where I would wake up in the middle of a dream and I'd record my dream knowing it's a song.
Yeah.
Or I would just hear a lyric as I'm walking down the street, or I'd have an image of something, whatever it is that sparks our creativity.
Yeah.
And I love that approach to writing a play.
Yeah.
Like I struggle with writing anything more than just one song because it's like for me the through line of a song is so much easier than a whole piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that fascinating that you can keep that up going through a whole play, that can propel you.
Well, it's not an easy ride, but that's the starting place. But I have a friend who's a songwriter, and she said to me one time, building a house is easier than writing a song. I always remembered that image.
Wow, I cannot even I can't even fathom that.
I think we're also fortunate in the clown slash mime world, and I do want to discuss the difference between the two, in that there are many opportunities to present just what you're working on, just a short amount.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to playwrights you're pretty much going to finish the play, have a reading of the play,
Yeah.
rewrite the play. I mean, that's, that could be 2.5 hours. It's just like you're never really trying out. I just want to hear this one scene. But with us, I would say that your shows are a series of vignettes. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
That are connected through a theme or, going towards a goal.
Yeah.
So, we do have a greater opportunity in that world to try out our stuff, which also in some weird way makes the project seem more digestible and possible to achieve because you're just doing it in small bits.
That I agree. That's how I work all the time. And some of it is because I think I'm lazy and I think, I'm going to got to get 5 minutes done. But I do that as a teacher too. I just ask people, let's look at 5 minutes of this and then talk about that and see what worked, what didn't, what's next.
Yeah. Aren't students always amazed at like, wait, I'm going to do 5 minutes. I'm going to talk about it for more than 5. It's like, we're going to talk about it for half an hour.
And we're going to work on it more?
Like, trust me. Or like, you only want 5. Trust me, you could have a really boring 5. Right? Yeah. It's really possible. You could have a boring 2.
But it's 3. A good way to work because it's a good way to just get a chunk and whatever it's inspiration or that becomes something else later. Like, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you teach mime and clown or only mime?
Well, Peter, I am not a clown.
Oh, you are not?
Let me be clear.
Okay.
I don't have any training as a clown in any way. I love clowns. I love good clowning. I love it. But I don't think I'm brave enough to be a clown.
Well, are we talking about the same type of clown? Because I feel like you do the clown thing of being able to take in the whole audience, acknowledge we're there without saying a word, show us you have a problem as we enjoy watching you try to achieve your goal or overcome that problem.
Yeah.
But is that clowning? Is that really what clowning is?
That's pretty much every clown thing you ever see is, Slava Snow Show. He has a giant snowball that he has to get across the stage, but it's too heavy or the wind is too strong or
I saw
anything
that
Bill Irwin or David Shiner does is like pretty much the same thing.
I saw Slava Snow in Paris when I was there. I think it was the first time I was there. And that show brought me to tears. I was bawling my eyes out. And a little girl looked up at me that was sitting next to me. And she's like, asked me in French, why are you crying? There was one scene where he goes to a coat hanger and there's a huge suitcase. He does this whole thing, putting on this heavy jacket, this heavy coat and the suitcase and then you hear the sound of a train. And it was one of those old suitcases, those vintage suitcases. And the train, all just what went on in my mind was the Holocaust, the sound of the train.
Yeah.
And that's when I lost it. So that was when this little girl, and I wasn't going to explain to her, why I was crying. Yeah. But it was so powerful. Like that's clowning to me in that way can be just so powerful.
Yeah.
But Bill's not a clown.
I know.
Well, I just think it's a different toolbox in a way. I mean, there is like, it's you in front of an audience, but I think
then we're all clowns.
Yeah, I think mime is different than them. There's this other technique, and certainly in pantomime, that's this whole idea of illusion and creating objects and creating environments that aren't really there; they're imaginary.
What is there's a difference between pantomime and mime?
There is, yeah. Pantomime is what we all know. Pantomime is this kind of like, I'm going to create something that looks like it's there, but it's not really there.
Bill is putting his hands up and doing that's a mirror or a window that I cannot get through.
I'm doing the wall, yeah.
Yep,
and mime.
Oh yeah, look at me. You're doing a wall and I'm seeing a mirror. Isn't that says a lot about me? You get your fingerprints all over the mirror.
Right. But mime.
I saw the wall, just so you know, Bill.
I saw the wall.
Mime is less concrete. Mime is the idea, is the essence of something, like a gesture that gives a whole meaning to a character, or rather than giving a story about like picking a flower and giving a flower to someone else. In mime, you are the flower. You are the feeling of the flower. So I always think it is the essential imagery in mime, and pantomime is the concrete story of mime.
Wow.
It's like, I would say pantomime is, if you think about literature, pantomime is a narrative story and mime is poetry, where like in poetry, it's a limited amount of text, but within the constraint of that, something much larger can appear. That's what
That's
I
really
Wow.
beautiful.
That is, and it's funny because I don't think I've ever heard anyone make a distinction between that.
Yeah. Well, that being said, I blend the ideas together, but it's also like you're a songwriter, so I would say it's almost like writing a short story or writing a song.
Right.
It's like that what do they call that? The exquisite constriction. That allows something to come out of that. That's even larger and maybe even more universal. Because your imaginations really kick in, I think, with a mime. Just like when you said about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Just the sound of the train in a suitcase, that was you making that happen. I think
Absolutely.
that's the power.
Oh, absolutely. I was projecting onto that. Absolutely.
Yeah. You also have appeared in several Broadway shows. Were you in Scarlet Pimpernel versions 1 and 2?
Just one.
Were you with Ron Bomer?
I know him. Yeah, we didn't work together, but
I went to school with him.
Different version.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, he's a great guy. Yeah.
And you were in The Lion King.
The Lion King, yeah.
From the beginning, like the first workshop.
No, I'm the first replacement.
You are.
Yeah. It's funny. I was. I was up for The Lion King when it was the original production, and I didn't get it. And of course, was heartbroken.
For the role
of Zazu,
which is the bird.
Yeah, and I was really down to the very, very end, and they went with someone who was older. They wanted it to be an older character. And then about a month later, I got the Scarlet Pimpernel. And interestingly, I went to the Scarlet Pimpernel, and that's where I met my now husband, who was also up for The Lion King and didn't get it the first time.
As a performer?
No, as a
wardrobe supervisor. Yeah.
So we ended up both not getting the job we thought we were going to get. We ended up at Scarlet Pimpernel, met, and then we both moved to The Lion King a year later.
Kismet.
Oh my gosh.
It's the shirt.
It was, yes.
And you were able to wow them with a puppet performance with all of your years of puppetry training? How did that happen?
I had a little bit of puppetry knowledge, but it was mostly physicalizing things.
Right.
But I had toured for many years. I think, Peter, you know this. I had toured the country as Slim Goodbody, America's health hero. And there was a puppet in that show.
Nancy, you don't know Slim Goodbody?
He was a character originally on the Captain Kangaroo show.
Oh,
that
okay.
became its own thing, and it was a character who wore a spandex bodysuit with all the organs and muscles painted on it.
No penises, though.
No
Of
penis.
course not.
Penis free. And I would sing and do a musical show about how your body works and how to take care of it.
Wow.
You like that guy that created it, franchised it, basically, right?
Yes.
It was a guy with big curly brown hair, wasn't he?
John Burstein, yeah.
Yeah.
He had originated on Captain Kangaroo, and then he hired me to kind of carry it forward. And then we had many Slim Goodbodies through the years. I think they're still out there, but this all preceded the internet, you know?
Wait, whose phone is on? Somebody just dinged.
Oh.
Well, we must have hit upon something very important.
I
Or
know,
an angel
but
got its
the
wings or
angel's
something.
right.
So, okay, so you were touring around the country as Slim Goodbody,
Yeah.
going into schools and telling kids to eat their vegetables.
Yes, and a puppet would come out named Barbara Seville.
Oh.
And Barbara would sing an aria about personal hygiene.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And you toured around the country doing that?
All over the country for, get ready, 7 years.
Yeah.
How
loved
often
it,
were you on the road?
I was on the road 5 days a week for, it was during school years. And, and I would appear at like museums and hospitals and health fairs and that kind of thing. But it was a big full-time job. But the first part of it, I was a single guy and I loved traveling and I just absolutely loved it. I just did in a rental car driving around in my little spandex.
I think
suit.
I would have loved that.
It was fun. I had a blast. Yeah.
And you did it all without cell phones, without computers. You just knew where to go. You had a map that you had to look at while you were driving.
Remember AAA and the American Auto Association? I would go there and get maps. And track
all of
my
us
way.
would use maps.
Yeah. Remember those days?
Yeah.
But I
We're
love
so aging ourselves.
I know. But also as performers, I think we all know some of the best training you can get is in front of kids. So doing 3 shows a day, 5 days a week for kids is really interesting training. You really can't cheat, you have to show up. So I feel like show up. Did you hear that, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I really feel like it was very helpful for me. Yeah.
How long did you perform in The Lion King before your infamous accident? Your infamous what do you call it? Incident? No. No, what is
incident.
it?
Wait,
What do
what
you
is
call it?
this? What
Well, we're
happened?
gonna get to it.
A
It's
mishap.
what do you miss? No,
Did
no,
you
it's
fall on stage or
no, no,
something?
no, 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 no.
Oh,
This is a
word.
good story. Only if you're comfortable or allowed to share it.
I tell it everywhere.
Yeah.
I think I was in. I think I had done. Oh my gosh, 400 something shows. It was. Let me think for a moment.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, I was well into it. It was like 5 or 6 months.
You did it with Max Casella as well? Was he
Yeah,
doing
Max
Timon?
was
Yeah.
there.
Are we
Yeah.
talking about Lion King? We're back
Yeah.
at Lion King.
Yeah.
Okay.
Max left pretty early on, but I was doing the Lion King and playing this bird, which involved a lot of, like it's a traditional puppet in the Lion, this rod puppet that you had to use triggers in your hands. And what I didn't realize in doing the show, 8 to 9 times a week and rehearsals and adrenaline and all that stuff is I was really wearing down my tendons.
Oh.
And I just knew that I was tired. But one day walking to work, my hands stopped working and they started swelling up like hams.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
ended up in the hospital for 10 days and they finally were able to diagnose, my hands were like purple, but they diagnosed me with ulnar nerve damage and tenosynovitis and tendonitis. And it was all from just
Manipulating the
overusing tendons.
right.
Your tendons are basically rubber bands and they
Yep.
stretch and stretch until they finally snap. And gratefully, my body stopped me before my tendons snapped.
And before
So I
you're
had
in
a lot
front
of.
of
I still have
2,000
permanent.
people. You do.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And did they not redesign
Oh yeah,
did they not redesign the puppet
They did.
mechanism after that?
They did. They redesigned it, which was a huge investment for Disney, and so they
Yeah.
were very interested in me coming back. And as soon as I got back into the show, after being out for I think 10 or 12 weeks, trying to I had to relearn how to move my fingers and stuff.
Yeah.
I went back in and I could feel it starting again. And luckily, that coincided right when I met Marcel Marceau or came in contact with Marcel Marceau, and that led me leaving the Lion King, heading off to study with an old French mime.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I thought it was the other way around.
Just real quickly, I actually had shoulder surgery and I lost the use of my right hand as well. I have it, it's back. I
Yeah.
had to not being able to use your hand. It's wild having to rework moving. I couldn't close my hand. It's
Yeah.
people don't realize like the things that we get used to being able to do on a regular basis, how easy it is to mess that up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a big thing on Disney to not have thought about that in advance, right? I'm sure other
Well,
people had problems with it as
yeah,
well.
there have been lots of problems through the years, but I mean, in their defense, I think they had never done anything like The Lion King at the
Of
level it
course.
was going to be done. So all of a sudden it's like that Broadway schedule and everything is kinetic. Everything is
Yeah.
done with their hands. And so it just was incredible overuse of muscles. So just like
And repetition.
Repetition,
Sometimes with only
and
3 hours
adrenaline.
in between.
Yeah. But I know, Peter, you were in Stomp and similar kind of thing.
Oh,
like
there's people who have lifelong. I mean, I'm pretty sure my lower back issues are from lifting my own weight in a tea chest in a 3,000 seat theater going across a football stadium sized stage. Gung, 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 gung. I mean, I feel it now. It's like, lots of folks just, they did it for many years and then went, oh no, I can't do this anymore.
So before we talk about working with Marcel Marceau, which is fascinating to me, I want to just quickly talk about what you do to keep yourself fit so you don't hurt yourself. Because mime, you have to have a core that is so strong and your body has to be, you have to have complete command of your body, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
So what do you do to maintain it?
Well, it's it's an ongoing process. I'm 65 now. I know I don't look it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it is a thing, something I really think about all the time because I really am still working and I really want to keep working. So the thing that I've discovered after years of doing physical therapy for many years and going to the gym for many years, which I've always hated and never been very good at, I discovered about around the time that I started in The Lion King, I started doing yoga and that evolved into doing hot yoga. And I've been doing that for 25 plus years now. And I went this morning, I went yesterday. And for me, that is the thing that has allowed me to keep this going.
Wow.
The whole idea of yoga and also the heat of it, the fact that your muscles really can release and it really focuses on breathing and that kind of thing. So I'm a huge proponent of hot yoga.
I've heard about it for so long. Do you go on 8th Street or something? Is it?
I go to Modo Yoga, which is on 6th Avenue and 10th Street. And I was there the day that studio opened. I started there. I'm just a fan. I just love them. I'm going out to LA to perform next week, and I'm going to Moto out there, and I've done it, and that's what I do.
That's great.
It's really good for my brains and just stress and anxiety and remembering to breathe. So it's good for that, but it's also just great muscularly for me.
Your show is playing all the time. Your shows, you have several, are playing. I remember a few months or maybe a couple of years ago, I was like, dude, how do you rememorize all that? You're like, I know.
Well, COVID, yeah. Prior to COVID, I have 4 shows that I was doing very regularly, and I just had them all in my brain and in my body. And then COVID hit, and if you sit home for a year and I turned 60 then too. It was like, oh my God, this is a whole different ballgame to try to kinesthetically keep that going and also just remember words. So it's an ongoing thing. I'm about to do another show, an older show of mine that I haven't done in years, and I really have to put myself on a schedule of relearning it.
Yeah.
It used to just all be in there, and I didn't worry. But now I'm a little worried.
Can we talk about Marcel Marceau?
Sure.
So you were at the Lion King working, and did you just by chance meet him, or what happened?
No, I obviously knew who Marcel Marceau was from a very young age, and I had seen him perform probably 20 sometimes. I was really, really inspired by him. He had come to Montana, where I'm from, when I was a 17-year-old, and my mom bought me a ticket, and that was a really big part of my life. Like, that is what I want to do. But in meeting him, I was doing The Lion King, and I got injured, as we were talking about. And one night, honestly, at the hospital, I was watching late night TV. My arms were in these casts, and on the TV came a late night news story about the world's most famous mime going on his 80th birthday world tour. And it was just it was one of those moments, like, bing. I just thought, wow, he's 80. My arms are in casts. I've never studied mime really with anybody. I was a self-taught mime. I thought, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to have to do it now. And I called him on the phone the next day.
Oh my God, that's great.
I love the image of 2 mimes talking on the phone.
Right.
It's a great title for a show too.
Right. But I really sought him out, and he wasn't very interested in me because I had never studied mime. I thought, well, I'll sell him on me being an actor. Like, I'm on Broadway. I've done all these things. That was absolutely no interest to him. He wanted young people who wanted to be pure mimes. But eventually, I jumped through a lot of hoops for him, but he eventually accepted me. And then I just went out with him on and off for the next 3 years when he was touring. I'd just travel with him and study. It was amazing. It was really hard because he was really famous, really French, and older.
I like that. Really French.
Really French, like from another way of teaching.
Old time French.
Right.
It's a whole different mentality.
That it wasn't like a Gaulier experience, was it? Like that you went home every day feeling terrible about yourself.
Oh my God, yeah.
You did, yeah.
Oh
okay.
my God.
I thought they were similar tracks. So there we go. Clown, mime, similarity. Somebody else we talked to was Gaulier. Someone else on our podcast was saying, "Oh, that's a lot." Yeah.
It was awful.
Especially when you're not a kid, when you're like, "I'm not putting up with being talked to like this." What?
I packed my bags and walked to the bus station one night.
Oh, wow. Of course. You're done. Yeah.
It was
I can't.
Horrible. But part of it was he was from another time, and he taught in the masterclass style. You didn't ask him any questions. He was not a nurturing kind of person. And, we as Americans, I just think we're a little bit spoiled on how we've been taught in a way. And so for me, I had to get over myself more than anything else. I had to just, it's that classic, like, careful if you meet your heroes, they might not be what you cast them to be.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant. He was also just a brilliant performer, and I tried to focus on that. And
he might not have been a great teacher, but
yeah, I don't think he really was interested in teaching. He had to teach at the end of his life because that's how he was making a living. But he's in my every move still, so I know it was the right thing for me to do, but it was also probably the hardest thing I'd ever done.
So now you're a teacher, and you're not teaching the way you were taught, are you?
No, in fact, it's also, that's something I want to credit Marcel Marceau, because I think it made me a better teacher having him, because I realized what was missing for me, and I have really made that a big proponent of how I teach, is to really present mime as a universal language. It's something we all have the ability to do. It's something we all use every day, as opposed to it's this form you'll never get to where I am. Marceau's was like, this is you will never achieve what I do. So I very much, I'm a nurturer as a teacher, and I really encourage people to find their own physical voice, and I credit him for that, because it was a big lesson for me, and what would have helped me excel more and not want to like kill myself.
Is there a different physical way people can mime? So pantomime, is the wall. You have to set those boundaries so people feel that barrier.
Yeah.
But yet, is there a fluid way to mime that people find? Like, do you find that your students are finding different ways of doing it that you're like, oh my God, I never thought of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I look for that, actually.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I think because you're a writer as too, is I feel like what I provide is a vocabulary.
Yeah.
I teach them a vocabulary and then encourage them to become writers. And how you use the ABCs is up to you as an artist. So I love it when people have a different style than mine, because mine is pretty connected to Marcel Marceau. But I love it when people try new things. And I feel like once you learn the vocabulary, if I understand what you want me to see and feel, then it's working. What you're doing is working if you brought me with you. That's important to me, is to help people find their own way.
Okay. I think we're going to probably have to end shortly, because that...
Is that rain?
It's like teeming, horrible rain right now.
Yeah, and it's going to hit us in about 10 minutes probably. I can't wait to see you perform.
What is next? What are you going to do next? I mean, you've done everything.
Well, I just was running a show in New York. It just finished this week, and then
it goes without saying.
Yeah, and
that's the name of the show.
Yes, I'm taking it to LA next week. So I'm doing it in LA for a week at some different venues, and then
you just booked it yourself, or
And then I got invited to Dublin, so I'm taking it to Dublin to a festival in May, and I'm taking it to Singapore and some other places. So I didn't intend. This is an older show. I didn't really intend to do it again, but it just kind of came alive again. So I'm just riding the wave.
Is there a manager taking 15% of what you make?
No. If anybody knows, if there is a manager out there that would like to work with a mime, but I just I've never
an actor. You're an actor.
I've never found the right connection that way, so I just do it myself.
But it sounds like you don't need to for what you're doing, and you're able to navigate it all and get what you need. Well, is it a lot of work that you don't want to be doing?
It's a lot of work that I have learned how to do, and Peter Michael Moreno, I have to say, is one of the people that's helped me learn how to do this. Like, the reason I went to the Edinburgh Festival was Peter Michael's encouragement. And I think he's a really great example of someone who learns how to self-produce and move things forward. So I try to do that too. And it's hard, but it's, otherwise you're waiting around for someone to pick up the idea. So I just try to keep moving it forward. And I keep hoping someone will step in and say, I'll take you from here.
I want you and Ben Modell to work together.
Oh, I love Ben.
Oh, that would be really interesting.
Oh, you know Ben?
Oh. Yeah, he was on the podcast.
Maybe that's him.
Yeah, we've talked about doing some things together. I want to do a silent film with Ben and film it.
That would be really cool.
Yeah. Do that, and get Mark Lonergan to direct it.
Exactly. Actually, I would love that.
You're welcome. Hey, thanks for checking us out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.